Right, morning, year two. How are we? I thought I would video today for a couple of reasons. One is selfish. I'm not feeling particularly wonderful, and the thought of a kind of 2, 3 hour Zoom isn't really doing it for me. I don't. This is clearly not coronavirus. I think I'd be coughing and stuff, but yeah, just don't know. Not feeling great. Um, Secondly, this lesson's a weird one. It's a bit of a repeat in that we've got to do Ansoff, which you're going to do with Caitlin. We've got to do a new strategy for Porter, and then the same strategy for Porter. It's all on the spec, so I don't quite know why Excel want us to repeat all this stuff. I've tried to give it a bit of a new context and make it a bit more useful for theme three business. But yeah, I just think bit of a video, couple of tasks, especially after last Friday. And I've got to say, really, really, really pleased for a first lesson teaching you after 3 months, first lesson face to face. I thought you were brilliant. I mean, I don't want to discuss ear piercing and stuff, but we can let that one lie. But I really like that critical path thing where when you start things off, it sounds totally random. And then by the end of it, you lot are just like firing through. When you're revising, please just remember those kind of golden rules. That sheet that I gave you out, the instruction sheet, the earliest start time left to right, high in the node, latest finishing time right to left, low in the node. But please do as well. I know that it was a Friday afternoon lesson and I kind of skipped over it, but please do go through the theory as well, the pros and cons, the evaluations of it, because it is only a planning tool, isn't it? It's only a diagram. But yeah, really, really, really pleased. I thought you looked put in a great shift. So I suppose today maybe is a bit of a kind of thank you for that. You don't have to listen to me wittering on a Zoom. I'm just doing this for today. I know I did a few of these videos at the start of the year. And I know that videos aren't the most ideal way to do things, but I think rather than say, I feel rubbish, no lesson, I'd rather do this. And then we get back onto the Zoom thing next week. And as I said, especially because this is quite a repetitive lesson. So the other thing to say is that you do have a mock assessment, not a mock assessment, sorry, an assessment next week. I'll post up some more information about that on Classroom, but it's going to be kind of going over a lot of the first 2 or 3 lessons, the kind of external factor stuff. Okay, but I'll post up some more info on that on Classroom, so please keep your eyes peeled. And also, although I'm not any of your tutors, don't forget tomorrow's teacher training. And that is a perfect time for you lot to be really getting on with your UCAS personal statements, the basic form, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so please make sure that you use tomorrow. All right. Anyway, let's get to it then, people. Corporate strategy theory, Ansoff and Porter twice. So, what do we want to do? We want to recognize 3 key theories to develop effective corporate strategy. And hopefully, what you recognize from what we did at the start of this year with the recaps and also what you did last year is that corporate strategy, let's take it word by word, corporate, whole business. Yeah. So, it's the whole enterprise rather than the functional areas, rather than the departments. And strategy is your long term plan to achieve your vision, your mission, your aims, and your objectives. Okay. The key thing to know is that I'm going to talk to you about 3 key theories today. What this also does is it includes the Boston Matrix, the Boston box from theme 1. Okay, so if you get an exam question, we can look at this as we go through the next few lessons because they build on this corporate strategy stuff. It might say something like, I don't know, analyze the choice of corporate strategy that company X could pursue. You can talk about Ansoff, Porter, but there's nothing stopping you going through the Boston Matrix. So that's your dogs, your cash cows, your problem children, and your stars. And think about the interrelationships between those groups. Okay. All right. So corporate strategy, then, as we say, is the course or route that you, as a business, not as a department or a functional area, chooses to follow to achieve your corporate objectives. It will be informed by PESTEL and SWOT analysis. So that second bullet point is the business, before it chooses its strategies, will be looking at its PESTEL, political, economic, social, technological, legislative, environmental, and it will also be looking at its SWOT analysis. And if you don't know what I'm talking about there, go back on Classroom to the first couple of lessons that I taught this year. It's all there, okay? Corporate strategy influences which markets a business chooses to compete in and which products to offer. And as said, it will be influenced by its corporate objectives, its distinctive capabilities that I talked to you about at the end of this video, the corporate environment, or the competitive environment, so whether it operates in a monopoly, which it won't, an oligopoly, a monopolistic type competition, or perfect competition. It will also look at leaders' attitudes to risks, and we'll talk about risk and reward today, and then we'll think about the kind of local, national, and the global economic environment. So let's get straight to it then. Porter's generic strategies. Now, I've already done with you Porter's 5 forces. Okay, I'm going to recap that just literally with one slide in about 10 minutes time, 10, 15 minutes. Okay, but Porter isn't a one-trick man. He has another strategy. And straight away, this title worries me. Okay, and if you look at the first bullet point, Porter's generic strategies aims to make a winning marketing formula special. This strategy, this strategic tool, is going to allow firms to generate a USP, a unique selling point that can't be copied. But the idea of generating a USP from a generic strategy, generic meaning anyone can use this. Okay, so if we wore generic clothes, we'd all wear the same jumper, so to speak, or the same trainers. Okay, so how can you have a unique point about you if you're wearing the same trainers as 30 other people? What Porter also suggests is that it allows a firm to gain competitive advantage in the market that can be defended. And this is maybe where the strategy actually works, because once you choose a strategic direction, and we'll look at the groupings in a minute, it's a little grid, you should be able to defend your position. And what Porter looks at is two things. He looks at the idea of niche and mass, and he looks at the idea of costs. Okay, and I'll come to that in a second. I've also put at the bottom there Porter's 5 forces. That shouldn't be there, so feel free to ignore that. So this is Porter's genetic strategy matrix. Okay, now if you follow my cursor, if we look on the left-hand side, he puts the scope of the strategy down to narrow and to broad. You could almost argue niche and mass markets, narrow being niche, broad being mass. He then talks about the competitive advantage, and he's got low cost and he's got high cost. Okay, this isn't price. This isn't price that the public pay, though obviously cost will affect the price the public pay. Low cost means cheap and cheerful, low quality resources, etc., etc. Higher cost means a bit more luxuriousness. Okay, and then a bit like Ansoff, if you've seen that already with Caitlin, and you are going to see it with me in about 5 minutes. He puts in 4 groupings. So let's take a look at what these 4 different strategies entail. Then we'll look through the awful 5th strategy. So cost leadership. You can be a low cost producer in a large market. Okay, now what he's saying is one strategy you as a business can choose is that you go low cost, low quality, serving the mass market, okay, and you would be in theory mass producing within that market at very low cost, and your price will go very near the industry average, so you wouldn't really be being able to kind of set a much higher price or a much lower price, because there'd be so many substitutes. If you charge too high, people will go elsewhere. If you charge too low, well, people might think, hang on, that the quality might be too low, so I'm going to go elsewhere. Okay. If you go with a high cost strategy in the broad market, we call this differentiation. And this is a degree of making your mass market product different to your competitors, often at higher cost and price. Now, I'm trying to think of an example of this. If we take fast food as kind of a mass market, all right, and we're talking about Mackie D's and all that, I'm going to be controversial and suggest to you that Nando's is a differentiated fast food provider. Nando's has got all the hallmarks of fast food. You get a table in Nando's, but you go up to the counter to order. Okay, you don't get a waiter coming to you to take your order. All right, yes, you get given a menu. Yes, they bring the food to your table, but you go to the counter to order. That's very much like McDonald's, BK, KFC. You go to them to order. They don't come to you. And I know, admittedly, you get knife, forks, sauce, plates, and all that. But to me, it's kind of a twist on fast food. And they're obviously got higher costs because their chicken, because their resources are of a better quality than say what McDonald's use, and they therefore charge you a higher price. Okay, so to me, Nando's is kind of that differentiated mass market fast food restaurant, so to speak. If we come down to the niche markets, we can have something called a cost focus. You're carrying low costs in a niche market, low cost products in a niche market. And to me, that seems to be the most crazy strategy because if you did, well, you did do niche markets last year. Niche markets usually are the more kind of higher costs, and you're really trying to stick out to so not your competitors. You can tell I'm not feeling particularly good. Stick out to your customers in quite a narrow market. But if you're going to be using cheap resources when customers are looking maybe for a bit of quality in that niche market, I don't know how successful that strategy is going to be. And your differentiation focus, you're producing in a niche market, but you're working with higher costs. You're working with better quality resources, better quality workmanship, better quality labor, maybe a bit of automation going on. So you're making a totally differentiated product at a higher cost in a niche market. And you don't need me to talk to you about, so I'm just going to have a quick sip of water. You don't need me to talk to you about examples of niche markets, okay? Go back to your year one notes, and that's going to be in theme one, to be honest with you. But there are 4 suggestions of generic strategies that make you unique. And once again, you got to query generic and unique. But yeah. All right, then. Stuck in the middle. This is where you don't want to be. This is where you as an organization choose a bit of each strategy and you mix and match. What Porter is saying is you should really be going for one strategy, stick to it, defend your position. If you're stuck in the middle, you're doing a little bit of everything, and that's not particularly good. Okay. All right, strategy 2 is Ansoff. Now, Igor Ansoff, what he developed is his own strategic grid. And again, you may have seen this last year. You may have seen this with Caitlin. You are going to see this with Caitlin. I'm not too sure where you're at with that, but it does appear on both theme 4 and on theme 3. So paper 1 and paper 2, Ansoff can be used for. And what Ansoff says is we can look at the markets we operate in, either new markets or existing markets. And then products, we can sell our existing products or we can make new products. Okay, so let's go top left first of all. And this is just like Porter's generic. If you choose as a strategy, so you've done your pestle, you've done your SWOT, you've looked at the market you're operating in, you see what's what, and you think we need a new strategy, then you choose to keep on selling existing products into existing markets. You are penetrating the market. You are consolidating what you've already got. You're selling more of the same thing to the same people. Okay. You could, in theory, be withdrawing. This is not withdrawal from the market. This is withdrawing yourself to just not changing anything. So one strategy, according to Ansoff, is don't change. If what you're doing is a winning formula, don't change. Selling Coca-Cola full fat red can to customers of Coca-Cola, you're withdrawing yourself to saying this is a cash cow product, this is a maturity on the product life cycle. We don't need to do anything. Okay, so there we go. We do nothing. What about if you choose to sell existing products to new markets? Okay, we call this market development. So this will be like, for example, Coca-Cola full fat red can again, saying that we're going to start selling. And I'll try and think of a country that wouldn't have Coca-Cola. I don't know, there can't be any. I don't know. We're going to sell Coca-Cola into Kyrgyzstan, a former Soviet republic, okay, out towards Pakistan and Russia and stuff. Yeah, that's your market development. New selling your existing products into new markets. If we go down the route of product development, that will be new products. Okay, to existing markets, new products, existing markets. That will be Coca-Cola doing what they do, coming away from the full fat red can Coca-Cola and going down. I don't know, maybe they're going to make some health juice. I don't know, all these smoothies. They're probably doing it anyway. But yeah, so they're going to say, right, you Coca-Cola drinkers that like your sugary drink, don't have that anymore. Why don't you have this really healthy smoothie with guava and whatever other stuff they put in these things, okay? And the last one, new products to new markets, differentiated, unrelated products to new markets. Coca-Cola starts selling Hoovers to wherever, I don't know, to the Tajikistani market, okay? Uh, it might sound silly, but we'll look at diversification in a bit. But if you think about it, if you look at the risk factors, existing to existing is very low risk, okay? But as we move towards diversifying risk and rewards, if you get your Hoovers to the Tajiki market as Coca-Cola right, you're going to make absolute fortunes. If you get it wrong, that threatens the whole company, okay? So a few examples then. In terms of the market penetration, then market penetration is the existing market, existing product. All we're saying is that in 2009, an Irish airline, Aer Lingus, dropped their prices. It was as simple as that. They identified the fact that Ryanair and EasyJet were coming on stream, and they thought, what we better do, we better go and become a budget airline. So kind of almost do nothing. But we're just dropping our price. The risk was low. If it didn't work, you raise your price again. And in terms of the unknowns, they knew their market, they knew their customers, they knew the customers would like a lower price. So boom, there we go. In terms of the product development again, so product development, we're selling new products to existing markets. Well, you could argue 4G, 5G phone networks. We've got a distinctive identity. And, Virgin at the moment, who I use, don't have 5G, whereas someone like Vodafone does have 5G. So you lot that are on Vodafone or O2 or whatever have got a distinctive identity from someone like me who uses Virgin. So I'm looking at my phone, who uses Virgin, okay? In terms of the market development, then that's going to be selling existing products to new markets. This is my favorite example. Lucozade. Now, when in the 80s I was a very young child, I remember specifically in about 1985, I had a really bad stomach. I was off school. I was being story of my life in it, being ill, as those that I've taught know. I was being sick. I couldn't keep any food down, and my mum said to me, Neil, we need to get you some Lucozade. Okay, so I sat in with my dad, and mum went to get me some Lucozade. Now, you lot, when you want to buy Lucozade, you go down the shop, you go Sainsbury's, you go Tesco's. No. 1985, my mum had to go to the chemist, and she had to get Lucozade from behind the shelf. Lucozade was almost a prescribed medicine. It was so sugary. It was so medicinal in its taste that it wasn't a mass market product like it is now. But in terms of market development, it shifted from being that behind the counter medicine to a sports drink. And if you think about Lucozade now, it's the connotations are football, performance, health. When you run, you refresh, you top up yourself. But why they did that was, think about kind of almost niche and mass, selling Lucozade as a medicine, as a medicinal product, kind of a pretty niche market. But if you make it mass and you kind of water it down a bit, you take out some of the chemicals, reduce the sugar count, it can become a meaningful mass market product. And don't forget, if you know anything about Coca-Cola, and let's not get hung up on it, Coca-Cola started as what we call a gentleman's tonic. This was back in the 1800s. A gentleman's medicine. It was a pick-me-up. And I don't think I'm telling you anything that you don't know, but think about the name Coca-Cola, coca leaf. There was a little bit of cocaine in there, okay? And it was simply sold in medicines, in pharmacists. Not like medicines that not like pharmacists that we know today. 1800s America's pharmacists. They were like luxurious places to go and hang about and get all the newest health treatments. Yeah, you as a gentleman, as a man, it was commonly aimed at men, you'd have your pick-me-up with cocaine juice. And obviously then you can't sell a cocaine-based drink to the mass market because laws came in and said they couldn't do it. So Coca-Cola has had to develop its market and start selling to the mass market. All right. And finally, diversification. Just think about the Virgin Group, okay? Think about, I don't know, they're starting space travel. Richard Branson started Virgin to release music, records, CD or tapes as it was back in the 80s. Then it was Virgin Trains. Then it was weddings, boutiques, airlines, and now he's going to go space travel. You want to go up to space, hit up Virgin Galactic, you go to space around, it's pretty expensive and you might not come back, but whatever, give it a go. And also Tata selling from steel to cars to tea. The key thing about diversifying is it spreads the risk. So we know for Virgin Music that the sale of vinyl, which is kind of is holding records, is holding, but CD is dead. Cassettes obviously died out back in the 90s. So that part of the business probably doesn't make much money. But in theory, the kind of the trains up until recently are probably earning a bit of money. Virgin Airlines up until recently earning him a fair amount of money. The risk was being spread. And for Tata Motors as well, if the bottom falls out of the tea market, they've got steel to rely on. If the bottom falls out of the steel market, they've got the tea to rely on. Okay, so the risk is being spread. Just to evaluate Ansoff, it just gives you options. It's a bit like everything. It doesn't tell you what to do, it just gives you options. CPA told you the best way to do things, but it didn't tell you what to do to meet these objectives. Porter's generic, give you options. Here's what you probably could do. It doesn't tell you how to do it though. But it does allow managers to be computing risk. With Ansoff, unlike Porter's generic, you can adopt more than one of the strategies, okay? If you choose to go for a bit of market development and product development, well, go for it. Ansoff is useless without Pestel and SWOT analysis. It only considers two variables, and it could be seen to be a bit too light touch. It could be seen to lack depth, okay? And just a reminder, that is strategy 3, Porter's 5 forces. And if you need to, I think we did this on Zoom way back in September, October time. You can go back, and I recorded the Zoom video, take a look through. We've already discussed this. Okay, so we're talking about the rivalry among existing competitors. We're talking about the kind of market that we operate in. Is it an oligopoly, monopolistic, or is it perfect? The bargaining power of buyers, the bargaining power of suppliers, the threat of new entrants and entrance and exit barriers, and then the threat of substitutes. Okay, but as I said, this should look familiar to you. I've actually given you this slide already. All right, so to sum things up then, people, if you follow one or more of these strategies, okay, what you should be able to do, you should be able to gain some kind of competitive advantage because you've developed distinctive capabilities, okay? We have combined expertise, knowledge, and experience of leaders and founders of a business. So it's up to them. It was up to your Steve Jobs, up to your Bill Gates, up to your Ray Kroc for McDonald's way back in the day. It was up to them to choose the strategies, okay? And as we said for McDonald's, Ray Kroc, that guy started simply at baseball games, at American sport baseball. He used to sell like hot dogs and burgers and chips, fries, as they were called, off like a little cart that he'd take to baseball games. But it was only because of Ray Kroc that this whole kind of fast food thing, that this automated food production process, that this kind of sell it cheap, no waiter service, just get people to queue up, pay a few quid, they get what they want. That was his decision to choose that specific strategic direction. Okay, but what he would have then done with his employees when he started opening franchises and restaurants was that he would then let his managers, he'd let his assistants, his subordinates learn from his experience of running that first little wagon that he took to baseball games. And this gave McDonald's a very early competitive advantage, okay? But also, what it gave McDonald's was a unique set of characteristics to the business. It gave McDonald's that architecture. It gave McDonald's the look of McDonald's. It gave McDonald's good relationships with key stakeholders, with state governments in America, that he could stick loads of franchises in to their individual states. It gave McDonald's a really good reputation early on because customers would go to these early McDonald's franchises and they go, oh, what a great hot dog, or whatever. And they would then spread this to their friends and their families, word of mouth promotion. And because of the early money, because of the early strategies that Ray Kroc and McDonald's brought about, this then let them innovate new products, new processes, new systems. And if you look at McDonald's today, yes, it's very different to a man wheeling about a wagon to different baseball games. But look at the technology that goes on there. Burgers made in 3-4 minutes, almost an automated kind of cell production system going on. And early on back in the day, McDonald's was definitely difficult to imitate by others, sadly. And maybe it isn't sadly, but now there is far more competition within that fast food market. It's anyone can do it now. Go and get yourself a deep fat fry, get yourself a couple of computers, get some chips and chicken, bang, you've got a fried chicken shop. Okay. When you've got a distinctive capability, when you've got your little niche, when you are Apple, and this is easy for me to say, when you're Apple, when you're Coca-Cola, when you're McDonald's, but you then test your distinctive capabilities, your architectures, your reputations, your innovations. Does this allow you to develop your market? Can you expand elsewhere? Can you provide noticeable benefits to the end user? Well, if I'm living in 80s America, I've got a business meeting at 9 o'clock and I'm in McDonald's at 8:50. I want my food within 5 minutes so I can get to my meeting. We were testing it with the end user. Are they difficult to imitate? Yes, McDonald's architecture, reputation, and innovation was very difficult to imitate. But obviously, as time moves on, people get around that. Okay, Burger King, KFC, get around that. And I think finally for today, what I want to say is that when you're thinking about these strategies, you need to think about loads of stuff from theme one, from theme two, and theme three. So when you're thinking about placing in a new business strategy, you need to think about planning your people to take on this new strategy. You need to be able to train them, and they need to be flexible enough to go from an old strategy, maybe do nothing, to diversification like that. Can your organizational structure, can your span of control and your chains of command handle new strategies? Is your leadership good enough? Are workers motivated enough? And that final point, I've never taught that before, but Ray Kroc, the McDonald's guy, Steve Jobs, they would have been entrepreneurs at some point, a really small business developing technology, selling chips to people at baseball games. When do they step up to become a leader? When do they become these kind of, you think Steve Jobs, one of the most innovative people in the world? When did that transition happen from entrepreneur to leader? When you've chosen a strategy physically, can you be productive? Can you be efficient enough? Do you have enough capacity to make these moves? Can you control your stock and can you control your quality? And one of the key things about McDonald's, and think about McDonald's whatever you will, the food is so standardized that the quality is standardized. Okay. And is there enough cash to do it? Are you liquid enough? Have you got enough money in the business to choose a new strategy? Are you profitable enough to be diversifying, according to Ansoff? Okay, so there we go. That's that. All right, two things I want you lot to do for me today, please. Number one, a very simple A to Z worksheet. Number three, and number two, I've got a bit of reading for you on Nestle and Kit Kat. And all I want you to do, I'll set this as a doc. It's a 10 marker, okay? If you don't want to do it as a complete essay, I'm not too fussed really. I've got enough marking for you lot to do that, as I said to you last Friday. But the question is, based on the information, use Ansoff's matrix to analyse Nestle's strategic options for its global chocolate division. Take each part of the matrix, so those 4 stages, and analyse what Nestle could do and the pros and cons of each. So you're trying to think about how we can grow Nestle based upon Ansoff's 4 bits. Think about what would be successful. Think about the cons. All right, listen, I'm going to go and leave it there. So I will set all this work up on Classroom and I will catch up with you next Tuesday for new teaching. To me, this was kind of a refresher. It's on the spec. But we go on to, I think, business growth next week, which is actually quite interesting. All right, so listen, have a good afternoon of work. Work hard tomorrow on UCAS. Enjoy Kayla's lesson on Friday, and I'll catch up with you next Tuesday. Thank you.